Minister Joan Burton.
Ceann Comhairle, and I wish to share my time with Minister Jadnat. I welcome the opportunity to speak this afternoon on the allegations regarding sexual abuse by members of the Provisional Republican movement and the Mairia Cahill case. First of all, this is not simply a debate about events that took place in Belfast a number of years ago. It's not just about a single legacy issue from the Troubles, nor is it about how Republicans policed their communities or administered their own crude forms of justice at a time before they supported the PSNI. These issues are all part of the events that have contributed to where we are today. But this debate is actually about the present and the future. It's about providing justice today for people who have been abused in the past, and it is about protecting our children from those with a record of abuse. And it is about the standards and the behaviour that we expect of the leaders of Irish democracy as represented in this House. 4 weeks ago tomorrow, on a Thursday evening, I met Mairia Cahill at length in my office. I did so because I wanted to hear her story for myself and to draw my own conclusions. She told me about the abuse she suffered for over a year by the officer commanding the IRA in Ballymurphy at a time when she was in school preparing for her exams. She told me how at a young age she realised that she had to live with this horror for the rest of her life. She recounted the crude IRA investigation where her abuser denied the allegations and how she was made to confront him. She named individuals within the Sinn Féin leadership as being party to this investigation. She said that Deputy Adams was involved in her case over a 6-year period, despite his denials that continue to this day. And she painted a picture of justice denied. First, when the IRA investigation failed to reach any conclusions, and then again, years later, when she was forced to withdraw her legal case, thus finding her abusers not guilty by default. Mairia spoke of the trauma she has experienced since her abuse and the devastating effect it had on her life, not least having to see her abuser hidden in plain sight by Sinn Féin, because her abuser was appointed by Sinn Féin as the face of community restorative justice schemes in West Belfast. Having listened to her, I was struck by her bravery, her courage, and her determination to proceed. She has also lifted the lid on the reality of life in a community under the brutal control of the IRA and Sinn Féin, a community where the need to protect the abuser trumped the needs of the victim, lest the reputation of the IRA and of the movement should suffer. And a community whose political leaders allow abusers to continue and live in the midst of children, contrary to all the rules of child protection. The first rule of child protection is to remove the abuser from the opportunity to continue the abuse or to abuse other children. That's the first and primary rule, Deputy Adams, of child protection. Having gone public to such effect, Mairia's case is now subject to a number of legal remedies. The Northern Ireland Police Ombudsman is conducting its own review following the ending of the court case, and the Director of Public Prosecutions has announced an independent review of 3 criminal cases linked to the original proceedings. Those processes must be allowed to run their course. But as they do, we are left with 2 key issues to address. First, the extent of child abuse by members of the Republican movement and the denials and the live cover-up that is going on. And second, the attacks that have been unleashed by Sinn Féin members and supporters on the character of Mairia Cahill in what appears to be an attempt to warn off other victims from coming forward. Regarding any potential cover-up, surely Sinn Féin must be consistent. Judging them by their own words and their stated standards, they repeatedly and understandably criticised the Irish state for facilitating a cover-up of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. Responding to the Ryan report less than 5 years ago, Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald said it exposed, and I quote, how the most powerful men in the Catholic Church in the Dublin Diocese conspired to protect abusers of children. Deputy MacDonald went on to say that this was a gross betrayal of generations of children. And she further said that anyone found to be complicit in the cover-up of child abuse must be arrested and made to face the full rigours of the law. End of quote. I agree fully with Deputy MacDonald's sentiments, and I ask her to apply these same standards to Sinn Féin and the IRA. In particular, does she apply this standard to the powerful man who leads her own party? I say this because Deputy Gerry Adams' response to Mairia Cahill's case has been frankly one of denial, evasion, and seeking to protect the IRA. He denies any knowledge of an internal IRA investigation or of meeting Mairia, as she states. He evades any responsibility for IRA and Sinn Féin involvement, claiming that the courts have cleared the abusers. And he protects the IRA by writing that these events were of their time and that the IRA should be exempt from mechanisms for dealing with abuse because, and I quote, they have long since left the scene. Deputy Adams's response to Mairia Cahill's claim is even more sinister when considered alongside his own inaction in protecting children from his own brother. This was after he was informed of Liam Adams' abuse of his daughter. In fact, we know from Deputy Adams' own court testimony that he did little or nothing to ensure that children were protected. For 10 years, he allowed his brother to work with children in Belfast and Dundalk, the two constituencies for which Deputy Adams has been a public representative. He did so, apparently, without once contacting social services or the police on either side of the border. And if he did make an intervention by other means, as yet untold, such representations were clearly unsuccessful. And yet, no questions that we know of are asked of Deputy Adams by Deputy MacDonald or other leading members of Sinn Féin. No statements have been made condemning conspiracies to protect abusers. No parallels are drawn between this powerful man and the manner in which the leaders of the Catholic Church protected abusers. And the pattern continues. In fact, any time that the issue of sexual abuse within the Republican movement emerges, Sinn Féin tries to shut the matter down. Last year, details were published of an internal inquiry into allegations of abuse by more than 100 members of the IRA and Sinn Féin. Can Deputy Adams clarify these allegations? which include allegations of the grooming and abuse of a young girl by a senior member of the IRA. They include very serious assaults against children and more than 100 cases of sexual assault. Mairia Cahill has repeatedly claimed that such an investigation took place and that Sinn Féin is in possession of information about multiple cases. In normal circumstances, it would be incumbent on any member of this House to bring such information to the appropriate authorities. Yet, what is Sinn Féin's reaction to these reports? Rather than express concern at allegations of sexual abuse, rather than to seek to find out if any investigation took place, and rather than question the appropriateness of their party president being involved, given his own record regarding his own brother, Sinn Féin sent out Deputy Doherty to deny that any such inquiry had taken place. And Deputy Doherty did that in vehement terms. He described claims that Sinn Féin had conducted its own investigation into cases of sexual abuse as unfounded and untrue, and said they marked a new low. And so the pattern is established: deny an attack, and it is being repeated to this very day. It is similar to the manner in which the hierarchy of the Catholic Church denied for a long time the extent and scale of clerical abuse and claimed it was limited to one or two bad apples. What we need Deputy Doherty, Deputy MacDonald to do is, rather than repeat the denials and facilitate the cover-up, is to follow Mairia Cahill's example and to challenge the powerful men in their own movement who have something to hide. However, rather than follow Maria's example, Sinn Féin prefers to attack her character. They do this very subtly. They deny the details of her story. They repeatedly make her justify her allegations. They unleash attacks on her online. They re-traumatize her over and over again. In doing so, they're playing a longer game. They're setting an example, actively discouraging other victims of abuse from coming forward by demonstrating the trauma they will have to endure in their fight for justice. At the same time, Sinn Féin portray themselves as facilitating the victim by putting forward practical solutions and new processes for dealing with the past. Yet in these suggestions, the onus is usually on some other body, the PSNI and Garda Síochána, the North-South Ministerial Council, to devise a mechanism or a process for dealing with the issue. And crucially, rather than start with the IRA bringing forward its own information about abuse within its ranks, all of their solutions involve putting the victim back in the dock. Will the first step ever be taken by Republicans? Since she went public, Mairia herself has had to endure a whispering campaign against her on the streets and a very public assault on her character by Sinn Féin supporters online. The least she deserves is that the Sinn Féin president calls off the dogs of war on Mairia Cahill. She has to be allowed to tell her story without Sinn Féin's keyboard warriors attacking her every word. Writing in a newspaper a couple of weeks ago, Mairia herself described the trauma that she had experienced in recent weeks. Addressing Sinn Féin directly, she wrote, and I'm sure you've read it, "And you, by denying my experiences, invalidate me as a human being, and by default, every other victim of abuse out there." And that's a very dangerous message to send to perpetrators. I was struck by the similarity between Mairia's words and those of the well-loved American poet Maya Angelou, whom others have mentioned already. And I know Maya Angelou is a poet that Gerry Adams is fond of quoting on Twitter about her determination. This is the point about Maya Angelou. It's about her determination to overcome the abuse that she suffered. Maya Angelou wrote, and I want to say this to Mairia, she wrote, "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise." Yes, thank you. Until Sinn Féin stands with the victim and not the perpetrator, until the culture of denial and attack becomes one of honesty and support, and until the same behaviour is demanded of them as applies to all the other parties, we will continue to ask questions of Sinn Féin's culture, their motives and their commitment to democracy. The comments by Deputy Adams at last week's fundraiser in New York, the reported comments, about an old story about going to smash up printing presses is a barely concealed threat to the modern media of the consequences of interfering with powerful men. In recent years, Irish journalists such as Veronica Guerin and Martin O'Hagan have been murdered, and we continue to see on our screens, on our devices, the savagery meted out to the members of the media currently reporting international conflicts. A free press is the cornerstone of our democracy, along with representation and a free judiciary. A free press is a cornerstone of this democracy. It always was, it always will be. I want to ask Deputy Adams to withdraw and apologise for these remarks and to remove the veiled threat that has been made to our free press in Ireland.